What up? A big shout out to everyone who liked and shared and donated in our last video. And some big popped off this week.
Really?
北七钢鐵人 aka Elon Musk said that Taiwan should be surrendered to China.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Now, we've already done an episode on Elon Musk before about his danger to human beings, and we thought this guy was a genius mind. It turns out he's just a regular old dickhead.
The one and only Mr. Billionaire Dick.
So when you're done with this episode, check out that one in the link down below. But first, we gotta get to a very sensitive topic.
Feminism.
Check it. We spent nearly 2 weeks reading tons of feminist books, literature, and propaganda. I haven't read so much since college, yo. But as we said before, when you see a ghost, you better run towards that nigga to see it clearly.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
And a heads up, this episode is gonna be a long one. Because not only are we going to uncover the secrets and the true meaning of feminism, but we're also gonna give you the tools so that you can properly deal with that fake modern feminist bullshit. And here's your fair warning. Today, we're gonna offend a lot of motherfuckers and fatherfuckers. And if there wasn't already, after this episode, there will definitely be a gender war in the comments. And all you keyboard warriors, keep in mind, this is only the second piece of the puzzle for extreme PC culture. So stretch your typing fingers, because we've already stacked up 2 cups of coffee, Alpha Brain, and half a Ritalin to prepare for this feminist debate royale.
Let the games begin.
So a few months ago, Elon Musk posted a picture captioning that he thought he was a leftist, but since the left had gone too far, he felt he had been pushed to the right. And at that point, we would have agreed with him. But after the last demoralization episode, we discovered that things are not exactly like 北七鋼鐵人 claimed. You see, here at Haojita, we believe that everyone lives in a 3-dimensional world, but using binary thinking, they create a mono perspective. Now, binary thinking is simple and convenient to gauge in, but in this 3-dimensional world, perhaps we should use 3-dimensional thinking. And if you take Elon's photo from one dimension, at a high morale and low morale, you will realize that Elon didn't really move to the right, but that the left became demoralized.
Of course, it makes perfect sense now.
Keep this image in mind so that you won't feel lost. So today, I'm going to reveal the first dimension. And in the final episode of this series, I'll reveal the third dimension. Once you shift your thinking to 3-dimensional, then you will begin to see the true purpose of extreme PC culture. Now, in the previous episode, we showed you how cognitive dissonance can be used to indoctrinate via forced compliance. Through that, one can create a demoralized ideology based on victimhood. The victim, under this ideology, can then force others to obey their standards. Otherwise, those who don't obey risk becoming the oppressor or the perpetrator. In the US, this ideology already infiltrated the education system. Now, forced compliance, the catalyst for this ideology, is what is currently known as woke culture. And today, we're going to take a close look at feminism. So, let's get one thing straight. The first feminist in history, the OG, was a fucking badass of high morale, Mary Wollstonecraft.
That is who?
Surprisingly, out of my many conversations with feminists and feminist scholars, upon mentioning Mary, I found that not a single one of them had ever heard of her, but almost all of them were stands of another French feminist. Mary Wollstonecraft was born into a middle-class family, but by the time she was 10, her father had squandered all of their family's money, even tapping into Mary's inheritance, which forced the family to move around constantly and get evicted. Her father beat her mother constantly, which saw Mary sleeping outside of her mother's door to protect her from her father. By the time she was a teenager, Mary bounced and started working odd jobs. Poor, uneducated, and alone, Mary Wollstonecraft would soon become one of the most influential figures in human history. And if you read what she wrote, I bet you'll find that many of you guys are actually feminists, yo.
Now, I won't go as far as to say that this is a mission impossible, but at the very least, it's a mission very hard.
Upon reading the report to the French National Assembly that stated that women should not be allowed to go to school and that they were nothing more than companions to men, Mary did the most gangster hip-hop thing someone could do by not only challenging the government, but calling them out on their bullshit.
The police coming straight from the
when she wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women. Here's one of the things she said. You can't expect women to spend in their nursery the time that they choose to spend at their mirror. For this exercise in cunning is only a natural instinct to enable them to obtain indirectly a little of the power of which they are unjustly denied a share. If women aren't permitted to enjoy legitimate rights, they will seek illicit privileges in ways that make both men and themselves vicious. Now, when we all saw this, we all had a oh shit moment, because in that statement, she could see the future. And then she said this: if woman isn't fitted by education to become man's companion, she will stop the progress of knowledge, because truth must be common to all. If it isn't, it won't be able to influence how people in general behave. If children are to be brought up to understand the true principle of patriotism, their mother must be a patriot. And the love of mankind, from which an orderly sequence of virtue arises, can be produced only by attending to the moral and civil interest of mankind. This is very important. She puts family and children in her thoughts. And in my interpretation, she believes that feminism is to make family stronger and society healthier. And then she dropped this bomb. Let there be no coercion established in society, no laws that force people into this or that social role or situation. When that is achieved, the common law of gravity will hold sway and the sexes will fall into their proper places.
Oh, well, shit.
Division of labor, anyone? As we mentioned in an earlier episode, in Scandinavia, where women's rights are at its peak and where women have the choice to do whatever they want, there is a natural division of labor. And then, finally, Mary's mic drop moment. In the government of the physical world, as distinct from the governments of the social or political world, it is observable that the female is, so far as strength is concerned, inferior to the male. This is the law of nature. This physical superiority can't be denied, and it is a noble privilege. But men, not content with this natural preeminence, try to sink us lower still, so as to make us merely alluring objects for a moment. And women, intoxicated by the adoration that men, under the influence of their senses, pay them, don't try to achieve a permanently important place in men's feelings, or to become the friends of the fellow creatures who find amusement in their society. Now, what I got from that was, even with the physical advantages, men shouldn't abuse their privilege, and instead should use it to help women and protect women. And she also mentioned a little bit about women's responsibility, and goes even further to call out the women of her time who sound a lot like the modern feminists of our time, some 230 years later. As for the upper classes, perhaps the great have always scattered seeds of false refinement, immortality, and vanity. Weak, artificial beings who have been prematurely and unnaturally raised above the ordinary wants and feelings of mankind undermine the very foundation of virtue and spread corruption through the whole mass of society. They have a stronger claim to pity than any other class of mankind. They live only to amuse themselves, and by law that also operates in nature, they soon come to have nothing to offer except barren amusement. I hope my own sex will excuse me if I treat them like rational creatures. Instead of flattering their fascinating graces and viewing them as if they were in a state of perpetual childhood and unable to stand alone, that creatures who are the objects only of pity and the kind of love that has been called pity sister will soon become objects of contempt. Women are so much degraded by mistaken notions of female excellence that this artificial weakness produces in them a tendency to tyrannize and gives birth to cunning, the natural opponent of strength, which leads them to exploit those contemptible infantile airs that undermine esteem even while they excite desire. This sounds like many modern feminists who often claim victimization and oppression via the patriarchy. For those of you out there who claim feminism, you might want to check what your OG said, homie or girly. This is what we call high morale feminism. Be rational and solve problems with logic. Who would have thought that a poor, uneducated housekeeper solved the problem over 200 years ago? After reading this letter, we at Haltisa now identify ourselves as Nutisa. So, with Mary Wollstonecraft repping high morale feminism, we've now got to turn our attention to the ambassador for low morale feminism. And in the name of equality, we ain't pulling no punches. So bring in our next opponent, Simone de Beauvoir.
Round one, fight!
Simone de Beauvoir, a Me Too pioneer who at age 31 was charged with sexually seducing her 17-year-old female student. How did Simone respond? She signed a petition to completely remove the age of consent in France.
Hey, what the hell is that?
All of this before Me Too and hashtags were even an idea. And then 10 years later, she would publish the book The Second Sex, aka the Modern Feminist Bible. Now, we and I both read all 700 pages, and it made our heads hurt. You remember back in our Johnny Depp series when we talked about the legal term hearsay? Let me refresh your memory. If you're presenting an argument in court, you must show that you saw firsthand or produce evidence of an event. Otherwise, using someone else's words or an account is known as hearsay. Well, there's a shit ton of hearsay in The Second Sex, especially in Book 2, where she argues her points against the patriarchy. In Part 4 of Book 2, she tries to make the argument that men standing up to pee and women sitting down to pee is one of the instances of indoctrination of the patriarchy. And she does so by saying, "A father told me about one of his sons who at the age of 3 still sat down to urinate. Surrounded with sisters and girl cousins, he was a timid and sad child. One day his father took him to the lavatory saying, 'I'm going to show you how men do it.' Thereafter, the child, proud of urinating while standing, scorned the girls who urinate through a hole. His disdain originally arose not because they lacked an organ, but because they had not been singled out and initiated by the father. Thus, he is protected against regret for his lost status as nursling and for his not being a girl. Later on, he would incarnate his transcendence and his proud sovereignty in his sex."
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation, calls for speculation.
So your evidence comes from a dad who you talk to? This is actually very similar to the way many feminists speak in my conversations with them. It's very rare that I've had one actually give first-hand accounts or produce any facts, data, or statistics. It's almost always based on I heard or I feel. In Simone's Second Sex, although Book 1 features a lot of facts, data, and statistics, Book 2 is almost entirely hearsay and feelings.
My emotions! My emotions!
And it is this book that was translated into Chinese and sold in Taiwan. And unlike Mary Wollstonecraft, who came from poverty, Simone de Beauvoir came from a very socially upper-class family. And this first clip finds her expanding on her experiences in the upper class, as well as how a certain group of people misunderstood her book.
Le portrait que vous avez tracé de la condition féminine, évidemment, n'est pas tellement brillant, n'est pas tellement rose pour la femme.
Non.
Est-ce que vous-même, vous avez souffert d'être femme?
Non, jamais. C'est ce que j'explique dans mes mémoires. Et c'est pour ça qu'on s'est beaucoup trompé si on a cru que le deuxième sexe, c'était un livre de revendication. À vrai dire, je ne m'étais même pas soucié de ce problème jusqu'au moment où, à travers les autres femmes que j'ai rencontrées, avec qui j'ai parlé, dont j'ai vu l'expérience, je me suis rendu compte qu'il y avait un malheur proprement féminin. Mais personnellement, non, parce que comme j'ai fait les études que j'ai voulu, comme j'ai pas eu de difficulté à les faire, que j'ai jamais trouvé d'hostilité parmi mes camarades, j'en ai jamais souffert.
Mais pourtant, vous avez eu une éducation, comme vous le dites, je crois, très bourgeoise.
C'est pas une raison pour aimer la bourgeoisie.
Mais vous ne semblez pas avoir eu des mouvements de révolte, quand même.
Non. Je crois que ça a été plus profond. Je ne me suis pas révoltée au jour le jour, mais j'ai gardé un très grand dégoût par la suite des institutions bourgeoises. Je trouvais qu'il y avait une incohérence entre ce que les gens disaient et ce qu'ils faisaient. Je trouvais qu'il y avait une énorme bêtise dans leur manière de vivre. Petit à petit, sans révolte, il y a une espèce de bêtise qui m'a sauté aux yeux. Puis j'ai voulu m'en dégager, et puis j'ai travaillé pour m'en dégager. Et puis une fois que j'ai été étudiante et que j'ai commencé à pouvoir faire une espèce de plan de ma vie, eh bien, j'ai essayé de m'écarter le plus possible de cette espèce de schéma tout fait, tout bâti. Je voulais inventer ma vie, je pensais qu'on pouvait inventer et qu'on s'en tirerait beaucoup mieux qu'en répétant des routines éprouvées, mais justement très mal éprouvées.
So, she comes from money, she's never been a housewife, she's never suffered, and she admits that all of the experiences in her book come from other people. But a few years later, she starts to judge the experiences of other people, experience that she herself has never had, and use it as a way to push forth an ideology, especially when it comes to the concept of motherhood. But before we cut to it, I want to share a few Simone quotes regarding her views on this. No woman should be authorized to stay at home to bring up her children, because if there is such a choice, too many women will make that one. It is a way of forcing women in a certain direction. And then she goes on to claim that those who choose the path of motherhood and housewifedom are, those who profit from their collaboration have to understand the nature of their betrayal.
I'm sorry, what?
Really? Betrayal? And then, when asked what the most revolutionary act a woman could perform, Simone answered, to change the value system of society by destroying the concept of motherhood. These quotes right here sparked a fire to the age of modern feminism, transforming it into something almost entirely different than its origins nearly 200 years prior. But these are just quotes, and maybe they are taken out of context or translated improperly.
Maybe?
So, let's hear from Simone de Beauvoir directly.
Que j'avais donc pas amené une vie intérieure, ce qui est la chose la plus écrasante dans la condition féminine, j'avais échappé aux servitudes de la condition féminine. Alors, plus tard, quand j'ai commencé à réfléchir, à mieux regarder autour de moi, j'ai vu la vérité sur la condition féminine. Et je l'ai découverte en grande partie en écrivant Le Deuxième Sexe. Et en grande partie parce qu'elles sont elles-mêmes filles de la femme et elles entretiennent cette tradition qu'elles imaginent qu'une femme qui ne serait pas semblable à elles serait un monstre, et leur plus grand souci, c'est que la petite fille soit bien féminine. Ce sont donc elles, en effet. Mais cela, c'est en même temps sous la pression, bien entendu, des hommes. C'est parce que c'est l'ensemble des hommes qui a enseigné à l'ensemble des femmes à se considérer comme dépendantes, passives, soumises, effacées, etc., etc. Les hommes, en effet, sont efforcés de persuader les femmes qu'elles ne devaient pas se suffire économiquement, qu'elles devaient s'appuyer sur un mari et se borner à faire ce qui est extrêmement important pour la civilisation telle qu'elle est, du travail ménager. Je crois qu'une des clés de la condition imposée à la femme, c'est ce travail qu'on lui extorque, un travail non salarié, un travail non payé, qui lui permet tout juste d'être entretenu plus ou moins luxueusement, plus ou moins misérablement par son mari, mais dans lequel il n'y a pas de fabrication de plus-value, dans lequel, enfin, la valeur d'apport du travail.
So Simone believed that being a housewife is akin to slavery and that it's oppressive to women. Well, that might have been the case to some women in the 1960s, but based on studies that were conducted from the time this interview was given until now, women were actually much happier in the 1970s than they are now. In fact, as a result of women entering the workforce at an alarming rate over the past 40 years, women have reported a massive decline in overall happiness. In 1972, they were actually much happier than men, but men have generally stayed the same all the way up until now.
Happy, 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 happy!
Now, before some of you claim bias, take note that this study was conducted by a male and a female researcher, and they even developed a mathematical formula to figure this shit out, yo. And when it comes to housewives, well, a study showed that women with careers tend to be less happier than housewives, but housewives' happiness are currently on the decline. Not because of the housewifery itself, but because...
Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Keep waiting.
They feel shamed by the modern working women community for staying at home.
You've heard this story before, right?
Yes, but the drama.
Could this be Simone's ideology coming home to roost? What do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. Now, it seems that Simone's brand of feminism demonized women who embrace their maternal traits and encourage men and women to work apart from each other, which is very different from Mary Wollstonecraft's feminism, which pushed for the betterment of women so that they could work together with men to create a better society. So in this is where we see Simone's brand as demoralized, choosing an escapist solution, whereas Mary's brand is of high morale, choosing to attack the problem head on. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad for women, straight or non, to embrace a few of their maternal traits, perhaps by showing a bit of sympathy and understanding towards those men who are suffering. Now, so far, we've talked a lot about women and their approach, and this next clip is for the 80% of you watching that are men. Mike Tyson has some words for you, son. Rapper Lil Boosie is expressing his unhappiness in his previous relationships, and rather than comforting him and giving him a pat on the back, Mike Tyson tells him some real giving him an uppercut of reality.
Any woman that we associate with because they remind us of our mother, even though subconsciously. Yeah.
Right.
That's the only reason I like you anyway, because I'm attracted to my mother and you have that characteristic.
Right. My first love, I fell in love with her because if I got sick, she used to console me like my mother. She was the only motherfucker to heal me like my mother. And it wouldn't, I ain't just ain't no sex.
Listen,
you know.
Listen, I know you said no sex, but know why it didn't work? Because of sex. You know what I mean? We look for our mother and our lover, but our mother could never be our lover because our lover would never love us like our mother. It's not in no woman to love us like our mother loves us. It's not in her. It's not in her to love you like your mother loves you. Eventually she'll turn her back on you.
That's crazy.
Eventually she'll turn on you, nigga. You treat her like a dog, you turn on her.
Love her like your mother loves you. That's the song. It ain't in her to love her like your mother.
Hey, now listen to
Man, that's some real shit.
Look, I look at my
That's
wife.
why you can't, man.
Nigga,
That's
no.
why she could.
I look at my wife.
Oh, Mike, I
and my
gotta.
wife.
Hey, Mike, I gotta tell somebody that.
No, you ain't listen.
That's why, bro.
No, I'm gonna tell you
It
something.
wasn't in her to love her like my mama loved me.
Not in her.
Yeah, it wasn't in her. It wasn't in her, man.
Know why? Know why? Because her survival, even though she do, but she does everything she does for you. Listen, everything she does for you is for her survival. Everything your mother do for you is for your survival. Now listen.
That's great.
Listen, can I tell you something? It's not over. I just want you to know it's not over. Bootsy, it's not over. You got a lot of life worth living. You gotta accept yourself. You gotta forgive yourself. You know, forgive yourself. You worth it.
I don't want to get hurt by no woman.
No. Woman, hey, listen. You ain't gonna get hurt by no woman. You gonna get hurt by yourself. What power does she got that she's scaring you? Look, you a bad street. I don't want to get hurt by no woman. Like, we living life on life. I don't want to be hurt. You done shot some.
Give no woman.
I done said this is a killer, nigga.
No woman, all my.
No woman, nigga.
No woman, all my.
Oh,
All my love, dog. I don't want to give no one woman all my love, and and she it up, dog. Like,
nah, listen.
That ain't no good feeling. I happened with me when I was 14.
But the name of the game is to stop the trick where I'm gonna stop these functional relationships like my mother and father. It stops here.
Well said. Oftentimes there are men who take advantage of women's maternal traits via sexual harassment, the R word, and IPV, and this shit causes a rise in low morale feminism that we see and complain about today. So guys, it's not all on women, yo. And for all you cheering who chase after women looking to replace their mother's tit, cry when they get rejected,
You shall not pass!
you gotta start treating your wives, sisters, and girlfriends well enough to earn that love, yo. So that then they will pass that love on to our children. And that's what we mean by men should protect women. Not just from other shit, but also from the terrible behavior that some of us give into when we can't get our dick wet. When it comes to low morale feminism, the most common term thrown around is the patriarchy. If you say or do anything that doesn't meet or conflicts with the modern feminist standard, they will staple the patriarchy label to your forehead. And to our viewers, you need to learn this term, social hierarchy. Social hierarchy is a system based on rank that determines your value in society. Question: have you ever parked next to a really expensive car and felt too nervous to even get out? What about someone who is rich as fuck? Or the most common thing, a senior colleague at your office. Now imagine getting into an argument with this person. Well, this person happens to be a man, you just might assume that they are oppressing you because of the patriarchy. But it is not. That is social hierarchy. Because that expensive car owning, high title, filthy rich asshole talking down to you could just as easily be a woman. And when a low morale feminist rolls up complaining about the patriarchy at her job, sis, I support women going out into the workforce to hustle, because that shit is easy. But if you think being a housewife because your man can actually afford for you to stay at home equals you submitting to him and invoking the patriarchy, at your company, you need to submit to your manager, your director, your CEO, and most importantly, you need to submit to your client, yo. No matter man or woman, that is a hierarchy. And most people know, in order to lead, you must first learn to follow. So the next time you encounter a low morale feminist claiming, "You are the patriarchy," then you can say, "No!" According to facts, data, and statistics in America, the number of homeless men is nearly triple that of women. And the ratio of on-the-job deaths in men is 11 times that of women. For the past 70 years, the self-deletion rate of men has consistently been 4 times higher than women. And when looking at the infamous pay gap, upon considering factors that contribute to it, job title, education, experience, industry, job level, and hours worked, the pay gap between men and women is only 1%. So, we're homeless more, we die on the job more, we self-delete more, but we only get paid 1% more.
What kind of shit is that?
When looking at the actual numbers, the data shows that in the modern world, men are the ones who are suffering. In a social hierarchy, both men and women will be oppressed, which is why we need to work together.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe!
Now, although Taiwan has a patriarchal history, the majority of that has been stamped out for over 20 years. And in this cruel world of social hierarchies, women with gentle and considerate maternal qualities are very precious and rare. And the men who want to pursue these women should do so only by presenting the best version of themselves. We encourage both men and women to engage in high morale activities, yo. Solve the problem. Don't run away from it. Men, stop blaming women for rejecting you and step your shit up. Women, stop mislabeling men as oppressors and work with us. Make love, not war, yo. So in the next episode, we are going to explore the second tier of woke culture, the T in LGBTQ.
Trans women are women. Therefore, they compete in women's sports. Like, that's really just like the end of conversation. It's not about like me believing in facts. It's not about me listening to the research. It's literally just called like, I'm saying this line because I refuse to be transphobic.
Well, where did you come from? Who are you? Wait a second, who are you? Where did you come from?
A very famous Canadian T teacher, and we'll also look at how the other letters of the alphabet are starting to speak out against T indoctrination.
And that is why I am particularly frustrated that the perspective of gay people has been subsumed within the LGBTQIA+ movement, seeks to essentially remove us.
And finally, someone will finally spill the beans on what a woman is.
That's what you're saying.
You want to do
that's
what you want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood, and turn it into basically a costume that could be worn.
So stay tuned and prepare for more blood. But before that, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you on the flip side. Peace.